There, you just share your whole screen.
Okay. Hmm. Hmm. Okay, do you see my screen?
Oh yeah, we're good.
All right, great. Well, welcome, guys. Glad everyone could make it. So, yeah, I mean, essentially, yes, I'm a digital marketing consultant based in New York City. I'm actually currently in Tokyo doing some additional research about the Asian market. But yeah, I mean, essentially, by 2015, um, there's an estimated like 50,000 or so consumers that are buying on a global scale. So essentially, what's happening is that a lot of e-commerce businesses out there are just thinking too small when it comes to the growth opportunities and going global. So a lot of different things are happening. One of them is that a lot of brands are forced to go international from a really early stage through pre-sales and Kickstarters for by customers themselves who are really interested in specific products and often ask these very specific brands to bring them in an international setting. So so value really has no border. If you have a product that is desirable by your specific audience, chances are people will want to buy from you. So how can you do that? So there's a couple specific ways. So first, there's like common misconceptions, if you will, as to what it is, what expanding globally really means. One is that it's costs a lot of money. So yes, there are some costs involved because you need to target your message specifically to all the different demographics you're interested in targeting to, but at the same rate, there's cost-effective ways to do so. Second, expanding internationally requires a local customer base. That is not entirely true. And then the third one is my local market is big enough for my business. Unfortunately, these days, you really have to think in a global setting to really think about the specific niche that really resonates with your specific product. And then the last one is that there's no need for marketing until my product is launched. You really want to start marketing really early on, and like I mentioned earlier, have pre-sales page or even Kickstarter pages to really start telling the story and really also see whether or not there's a need for the specific product that that you're planning on going to market with. So communities are the new countries. Interest is what brings people together. Two great case studies that I love to bring up. One of them is SoundCloud. So SoundCloud is actually was started by two Swedish guys who moved to Berlin, and they were already embedded with the electronic music industry, and so they really sought a need to sort of grow their network based on the community they already had established. So their community was mainly present in Europe and different countries of Europe, but from their network, they slowly were able to grow from a global scale. So why were they able to do that? Because they essentially knew specifically who their market were. They started specifically with electronic music DJs, and then they grew from there. So it's really important when you're interested in growing your brand internationally to really be niched, extremely niche from the very get-go, and understand who that specific community is, and not try to have too many communities, or not try to reach too many communities at once, and then expand from there. Another great example that I love to bring up is Black Milk Clothing. So Black Milk Clothing is an e-commerce business that's specialized specifically in selling leggings for women. They're based in Brisbane, Australia, and the way they grew is that they started strictly by having a Tumblr page where they were testing out different types of leggings with their demographic, which are fashion women in the fashion industry that are anywhere from 13 to 21, and they were essentially getting their feedback on what they liked and disliked, and collaborating almost with them to see what resonated with them. So once they had all that information, they launched their e-commerce sites. And since they already had an audience that was international, because they used Tumblr to do that, they were able to reach that audience, or they were able to sell from the very beginning. So it's really important to really know who your community is. If you haven't launched your product yet, start marketing from day one and start testing to see whether or not there's a specific need for that product. So targeting a niche and going global from day one. So that's what I already mentioned. I mean, essentially, SoundCloud is a great example of that. They targeted their niche and really thought globally from day one. I feel like a lot of brands are so focused in their local markets that they forget that whatever they are bringing to the market might translate into an international sense. So obviously, like essentially the key is solving a problem for a specific niche, and you'll grow from there, because if your product is exactly what that specific niche has been wanting for, it'll spread like wildfire. So essentially, it's just really thinking about how to have something that will captivate that specific audience. Like, really, that's the key. So it goes back to branding, having something that will really resonate, and telling a story as well that's compelling. I mean, I loved bringing back the point again of Black Male Clothing. What really made them resonate was the fact that the owner and founder of the company really had a really compelling story. His story was that, he started out of his garage, didn't really know much about fashion, started testing with different fabrics, and was collaborating with these young girls on Tumblr to get a sense of what worked and what didn't, and really was learning as he went along. So it really compelled a lot of other individuals in the fashion industry, and really sort of gave them hope that they could too sort of be part of that process. So really, it's just like trying to be authentic and really transparent with that audience, and having a conversation with them from day one. Another great example, actually, I interviewed the owner of Beard Brand a couple weeks ago, and he had a similar story in which he started with his blog from the very onset. So he went to a couple beard competition, and started sort of getting himself embedded within the community, had a blog that had a decent amount of traffic. Because of it, he was reached out by New York Times, who did a story about a specific blog, and that's when he announced at that very specific moment that he was launching his e-commerce site. So from the very beginning, he was also able to grab the interest of a global audience. And even though it's taking them a little bit more time than they originally anticipated, they now are selling their product in Europe, and they're more specifically targeting the UK. So here's a kind of like global overview, and I'll go through this quickly. But essentially, I think it's just really easy to just get stuck as far as thinking strictly locally. But it's really important to think about all the social worth, if you will. So there's actually more social media user in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa than there is in North America. I mean, if you see this number, North America has 181 million social media users versus Asia, which has 777 and 209 million for the Middle East and Africa. So these numbers, I mean, are huge. Obviously, there's some consideration that not the entire population speaks English. You're going to have to translate your brand and localize in some aspects. But I mean, if you're just to reach all the speaking all the English-speaking segment of each of these specific countries, you're already sort of embedding your brand, and it's giving you momentum to be able to go in and localize from there. So really think about the influencers and the influencer of each specific countries first, and then expand from there. So again, I mean, the Asian and African markets have the highest projected increase in social media and mobile adoption. So the numbers that I showed you are continuing to increase. And so something that's really important, and I'm sure you're hearing this over and over again, for your e-commerce site, it's extremely important to be mobile and tablet optimized. So responsive design essentially is key, because more and more buyers are actually buying directly from their mobile devices. And a phenomenon that's happening right now is that a lot of buyers are discovering brands through Instagram and then going independently and on the site and buying from there. So those are, again, things to consider when drafting your marketing plan, to get a sense and really be intimate with your Google Analytics and get a sense as to whether or not you already have demographic from specific countries. So here's sort of a brief overview of how you would need to get started in order to expand your business globally. So obviously there are five digital marketing pillars, which I'll walk you guys through. So the first one is SEO. So international search optimization is a little tricky, I'm not going to lie, just because depending on which country you're working with, you're going to have to translate each specific keywords. So when it comes to SEO, focus first on geolocated based SEO, so the one for your specific location. And then what will help sort of like bring knowledge is to create PR links. So PR backlinks is what they're called, and essentially is to combine your SEO strategy with your PR strategy by ensuring that different international publications talk about you. That will make your task a lot easier than going in and localizing each different keywords for each specific country. So that's sort of a little hack, if you will. The second one is user experience. So you really need to understand your specific niche when building your site and optimizing your site, because you want to make sure that the attitudes and emotion of your brand are properly reflected within your user experience. Then third is your content marketing. So content marketing is obviously any marketing that involves the creation and sharing of media and publishing content in order to acquire and retain customer. So, I mean, it doesn't just apply to posting pictures on Instagram. You really have to think about a holistic strategy. So how do you do that? Well, think of your brand as a magazine, if you will. Put together an editorial calendar. Start thinking about content that can supplement the story of your business, and put yourself on a schedule. I highly, highly encourage businesses to blog. I highly encourage businesses to be active on YouTube. And obviously, trickle down whatever content you're creating into all the other platforms in which you feel comfortable in. Another thing to keep in consideration, for instance, is so Instagram has actually a really deep penetration in several countries, and also a deep penetration in China, which is actually a really good thing, because I'm not sure if you know, but China has a lot of VPN issues. So essentially, a lot of the Google softwares are blocked in China. So reaching a Chinese demographic is a little trickier, but Instagram is one of those apps that is open in China. So for instance, using hashtags that are specific to that country, if you per se have within your Google Analytics customers that are coming straight from China, can really help your business get discovered in that specific market. So my recommendation here would be to test different hashtags that are related to different specific geolocations and see what sticks. So then the last thing, so then obviously number 4 is social media. So obviously interacting with your audience, creating Facebook groups, having a dialogue with them. A lot of brands do not have dialogues. A lot of brands essentially just put together sort of their point of view, but don't really try to interact or ask questions with their audience. And so when that happens, there's just not as much interaction. It's really hard to grab your customers' attention. And then lastly, there's ads and PR. So that relates back to SEO. If you're having a hard time getting bloggers to talk about you, another great way to get noticed is by investing in ads. Facebook ads are great, and they also allow you to target users from different countries, from across the world. So so here's the marketing process. The first one is to research, strategize, promote, analyze, and optimize. So researching is key. You have to like I said earlier, have an intimate understanding of your Google Analytics. You need to understand who's visiting your website. Where are they coming from? Is it strictly from the US? Usually, most e-commerce businesses have, or most brands for that matter, have traffic from different parts of the world. So try to analyze where that's coming from. And then later in the slides, I just kind of break down a good way to sort of research your specific keywords and see whether or not there's specific interest in a particular country. Second, you need to strategize. So strategize is to really think about the core value of your business. What is it that gets people excited about your business? And maybe don't be shy and perhaps put together a questionnaire which your audience can answer and go from there. Once you've strategized and came up with sort of a tactic to reach that demographic, the next thing that comes into place is promoting. So promoting has different facets. One of them could be advertising, like I mentioned earlier. So by creating Facebook ads that lead to a landing page where you essentially capture an email address. Capturing an email address is key. So these are, I mean, I'm walking you through sort of like the basic marketing process that should be applied whether you're only marketing to the US or on a global scale. Obviously, when you're doing a Facebook ad campaign, you want to target specific niches and focus in specific countries so you can get a sense of which country are more receptive to your business. The best way to do that is to just create different campaigns, run them over a period of 1 week. You can put as little as $20 for each of the different campaigns and see what is successful. Another way is to essentially do a niched ad where you're targeting a very, very specific audience within a worldwide sort of spectrum, and then from there start seeing who's interacting with you. Where are those customers located? Are they perhaps in South Africa, or are they in South America? Just try to understand why these customers are interested in your brand, and really try to think about the psychology of those customers, because that information will really help you target effective ads. So, like I just mentioned, you need to analyze the data that's coming back to you. Analyze whatever's coming back to you as far as like Facebook ad results, your Google Analytics, who's clicking on what and why, are they purchasing, why are they dropping off, at which point are they dropping off, who's signing up to your through your newsletter. All these data points are extremely important to help you understand not only sort of the health of your business, but again, the psychology of your customer, and also understand which part of your site or even brand messaging might need to be optimized in order to do a better job persuading your customer to buy from you. So that brings me to the last point, which is optimizing. Once you've sort of reviewed all the data sets based on the different campaigns that you've run, based on perhaps the feedback from different bloggers that you've reached out to, you can optimize your message accordingly. So let me sort of walk you through the research that you would need to execute in order to understand whether there's potential opportunity for a specific keyword. And what I mean is specific international opportunity. So first, identify keywords. Identify keywords that are specific to your business. So again, going back to blackmail clothing, I mean, that's an easy one, but their keyword would be leggings, but they also will need to add other keywords in order to understand trends that are related to that specific keywords. So are their leggings perhaps a little bit gothic, if you will, or emo? The more keywords you use to describe your business, the easier it will make your research process. So research these keywords on Google Trends would be the second thing that you would need to do. How do you do that? Well, so Google Trends, it's just if you put on Google Trends, you'll find the address. But you would test all these different keywords. So in this case, I have gothic fashion, cyber goth, emo fashion, and then it will essentially provide you a graph of the interest over time. So if you see here in purple, goth clothing has decreased as far as like the goth fashion term has decreased interest over a larger period of time. So it was a term that was widely used in 2005, but now 2015 it's decreasing. It's still more popular than some of these other terms, but it's good to know that if you're looking to start a business in perhaps gothic fashion, you just need to have that understanding that that term is perhaps becoming more niche, and people are also using more the term cyber goth. If you see in yellow, that term is growing in popularity. So then the next thing that you can do is look at the regional interest of these specific keywords. So goth fashion, there's interest in Australia, the UK, United States, and Canada. So that information is extremely valuable because it enables you to get a deeper understanding as to whom is interested in your product. So second, you want to define your customer once you have an understanding of which specific country hold potential for your business. So the best way to do that, personally, I use Facebook. And what I do is I do different types of research. The first one that I do is sort of interest-based to get a sense of who likes what. So if you see in in this presentation, essentially, I did a search for people who like techno music. So within that, it'll give me a list of individuals, which I can actually get a better understanding of other things that they like, which can help me later to draft a message or proposition that will appeal for that demographic. So people who perhaps like techno music, for this case, they also like, let's see, house and what else? Uh, Underground music, etc., etc. So once you understand what these customers like, you can also sort of dig deeper and do a search as well in forums and do a search for all these other topics that they like within Quora and Reddit, and really do some detective work, if you will. So research where your audience is spending time online is the second thing. You can do that again by going through Facebook and seeing whether or not they're active there. You can also use the same term that you're using by doing a hashtag search and seeing which keywords resonate most with your specific demographic, which hashtags is getting more likes, by whom and why. And then you can, based on all this information that you've collected, you'll want to create a user persona. So user persona, and sometimes companies have more than one user persona, but essentially what it is a picture of your ideal customer. What does that ideal customer looks like? What's their age group? What's their gender? What type of music do they listen to? What type of TV show are they into? What type of movies do they like? You need to get really granular there to, again, really understand what is the best way to reach to them, to put together or to put together messages that will really resonate with them. So third is market analysis. And just, sorry, give me a second, I need some water. So market analysis. So if you already have an international audience, you need to sort of review who these people are and then go back to the previous research you did and see whether or not there's a correlation. So let's say that, again, I'll just give the example of Gothic fashion. If, let's say, you have traffic coming from Greece, let's say, but within your research you had no customers who sort of come from that specific country, you need to understand why that is. So you need to determine essentially which demographic hold the most potential for your brand. Perhaps these customers in Greece just bounced straight off your site and did not spend time looking through all your different content, but someone from Australia, which relates back to the research you did, spent more time looking through your site and just really understanding what you're all about. So another thing that you'll want to do is like go through research trade publication for country-specific statistics on user behavior. Statista.com is a great site that I highly recommend you use. It has lots of different statistics that you can leverage to really get insights about each different demographic or niche that you're interested in pitching to. So yeah, and then again, another thing to understand is that not all countries are active on Google. I mentioned China earlier. There's also Russia, who uses Yandex. So you need to keep those things into consideration, which is why Instagram is growing more and more popular, because Instagram is used across the globe, really internationally, even in countries where they're not specifically using Google, if you will, because visual marketing really does make a difference, and photos translate internationally. Another thing to keep into consideration is that many countries access the web via mobile only. So again, it's really important to have responsive design when thinking about your e-commerce site. Review, so, and then finally, you want to review how your competition is marketing to other markets. So a great way to do that is to set up a VPN. What a VPN will allow you to do is to essentially replicate what you would see if you were in a different country. So this enables you to get a sense of how your competitor might be localizing their content. Again, localizing content is a little more costly, but that's something that will make the difference later on. When you're just starting out, having your site in English or other languages that are pertinent to your brand based on how much interest there is in another country is important, but only focus in a few languages at first before translating into all these different gamuts of languages. Okay. So it's strategy. So how can you'll need to set concrete goals when you're trying to think internationally. So you want to create a roadmap. So create a roadmap that's like 3 months, 6 months to a year. So you need to write down your web traffic numbers, get a sense of like sales and engagement goals, determine how many users you would like to acquire, and don't omit to set up a reward program. So first, think about your mission. How many users would you like to get? So let's say you're trying to get 10,000 unique visitors per month. From which specific country do you want them to come from? Try to be really granular here. So 10,000 unique visitor per month. If you only are getting currently 1,000 unique visitors per month, you have to be realistic. It will probably take you 3 months to reach those numbers or more. It will mean that you'll have to be more aggressive with your content strategy. It will mean that you'll need to really sort of think about all the different outlets where you can let your proposition out. So essentially promoting will be really key, and being really aggressive about going to different blogs, making sure they talk about you, and also thinking about influencers in all the different countries you're interested in expanding to. So when you're putting together your PR list, if you will, to help promote your business, you need to really dig down into each of the specific countries you're interested in and have a list of influencers. Now, don't try to reach for the stars too early on. Put together a list of individuals who have huge amounts of followers to people who just have a few thousand. You'd be surprised. Sometimes people who have a few thousand followers get actually a better engagement than people who have enormous amounts of followers. So, and they're also a lot more receptive to working with you than people who have bigger followers, because people with bigger followers will want you to spend more money to advertise with them. So really have sort of a range of different bloggers that you'd want to collaborate with and reach out to them one by one. It will take time. Be patient. So again, an example. Let's say you're interested. Let's say there's an interest for your business in Australia, the UK, and Germany, like the previous example that I mentioned earlier. So you would put together a list of bloggers for Australia, the UK, Germany, of individuals who are strictly blogging about Gothic fashion, per the example earlier. Try to have a pretty comprehensive list, and one by one, on a weekly basis, email them to see whether or not they have interested in talking about your brand. Now, if you're only getting negative responses, then you know that something's wrong with your messaging, and perhaps the way your branding is does not necessarily does not necessarily translate to the demographic you're trying to reach to, which again, that's why it's really important from the very beginning to start having a conversation with your demographic to really understand what they like, what they dislike, and just start interacting with them. So it's really important to create an online value proposition. You need to really figure out what makes your audience click. And again, I'm talking about specific niches. Don't think so much about countries, but think about niche. In the case of SoundCloud, what they all had in common as far as the electronic DJs, what they all had in common is that they wanted a platform in which they were able to upload their music, but also let individuals pay for specific track if they wanted to make the tracks payable. At the time, they were competing with MySpace, and MySpace really did not provide that option, and also made it extremely difficult for discovery. SoundCloud came as a solution to those specific problems that musicians were having. At first, they strictly targeted DJs in the electronic music scene, and once they had the approval from a few influencers, they expanded from there. But from the very beginning, they reached out to DJs from different parts of Europe, and from there, the word spread out to DJs in the US, DJs in Australia, etc., and their brand grew from there. So in order to attract your customer, you need to have a lead magnet campaign. What do I mean by that? You need to think of a way to attract them. So perhaps it's by, there's a bunch of different ways like this could be done, but perhaps you're offering them a free month of trying out your product and seeing whether or not if they like it. You can also perhaps ask them to refer a friend, and then they will get a freebie by referring their friend. You really need to think of a way to provide value so they'll feel compelled to interact with your brand. If they're not engaging, is that you need to go back and work on your branding, because whatever you're putting out there does not fit with that specific demographic. The second thing that you do is once you've attracted these email addresses or these potential customer, you want to make sure that you have a content flow. You need to be it's extremely important to do this regularly. So I personally know a lot of brands who only send newsletters twice a year. Unfortunately, twice a year is not enough. I know a lot of brands feel a little shy when it comes to sending email marketing, just because they're worried that it will be perceived as spam. Do not be afraid to send messages, either it's weekly or bi-weekly or once a month, whatever you feel comfortable with, but you have to be consistent. The other thing to have into consideration is that you need to segment your email list. You need to segment it based on people's interest. And in some cases, you might want to segment it based on the country these individuals are coming from, especially if you have different offers for different individuals in different countries. When you start out, you might want to just keep it simple. But if you see that as you're sort of growing your business, there's a need for you to segment that mailing list, you absolutely need to do that in order to be able to really send a detailed message or detailed information to that specific group that you're interested in marketing to. And then lastly, it's really important to have social referral options. And what do I mean by that? It's extremely important for you to be able to encourage individuals to promote your business for you. So before you do that, obviously you need to make sure that you have a devoted tribe of individuals who are really interested about your product and really love whatever you're selling. Once you have that, most likely individuals will be more than willing to share what you're all about. And what you could do is there's a couple apps out there that you could use. One is Referral Candy, and the other one is Forwards app. And all it does is that it enables people to either tweet out your product or share it on Facebook. And then from there, it's a great way to sort of build momentum. So these are sort of marketing strategies that are used across that are sort of not specific to sort of like an international audience, but they're oh my God, but they're not specific to an international audience, but they're sort of more specific to specific niches. So then, okay, so once you've done that homework and once you understand who's coming to your site, because every time you launch and promote your business, you need to look at your Google Analytics and understand who's coming to your site and who's not. So once you have that information, you need to decide on a localization tactic. So really there's three options. One is to create keyword-targeted and or geo-targeted landing pages to increase your local SEO. So geo-targeted landing pages can be a great solution to kind of help your SEO. The way that it will help you sort of increase your page rank in each of the specific countries. You'll want to help those efforts by having bloggers refer back to that specific landing pages, as you will need backlinks as well to really help own in the specific keywords. Another way is to create different translated instances of your site. So WordPress as different translation plugins. There's a lot of individuals out there who use Google Translate. I'm not a big fan of Google Translate because it makes a lot of grammatical error, but it's a start. My recommendation is to take whatever your information you're getting from Google Translate and have it go through a translator. You can find a lot of talented individuals on Fiverr to help you translate that content. And then the third option, which is actually the most cost-effective if you're a business just starting out, is to translate just your FAQs and other important information. Why would you want to translate just your FAQ? Because your FAQs will provide your customers with an understanding of how much the shippings will be for their specific country, how much taxes they will they will have to pay, for instance, what is your return policy for international customers. You need to have all that information laid out before really selling to that international audience. So it's absolutely crucial for you to have an FAQ page from the very beginning and translate that page for each of the specific market that's really active on your site. If you don't really see international individuals that are coming to your website yet, just have an FAQ that's strictly in English, but be prepared to have an international audience and really think through about all the different sort of shipping and return policy that will apply to an international customers. So when international customers buy from you, they know exactly what to expect. So then finally, what you want to do is choose a campaign platform. So the reason I mention that is because, yeah, like, I mean, obviously there's multiple platforms that you can choose now when marketing your campaign. And not all platforms work for all demographics. Pinterest is actually great for a lot of women-based e-commerce sites. And the great thing about Pinterest is that people who are on Pinterest are usually ready to purchase. And it's a lot cheaper to spend time on Pinterest promoting your specific products and creating specific pins that are clickable pins than it is spending ads on Facebook. Facebook ads are great, but they're less and less, or you have to spend more and more money in order to see results. So another tactic might be spending more time on Tumblr. I mean, I mentioned earlier in the presentation that brands like Beard Brand and Black Milk Clothing were able to grow their community strictly through starting their blog on Tumblr. So based on the type of experience you have and what's worked for you, just make sure that you stick to just a few platforms so you don't feel overwhelmed. You need to think of how you're going to differentiate yourself from the competition. Again, you did the research as to what type of content will appeal specifically to your demographic. So make sure that you sparkle in all that information within your campaigns. Then you need to think about what story you will tell them. You have to be transparent here. Don't try to make up a story. You need to have something that really is true to heart. Like, how did you start your business? What was your mission? Why is it compelling? Why would people care? Really open your heart here. And the following will really help sort of get people interested in what you have. And then you'll have to also put together budgets. Think about how much could you potentially spend on ads on a monthly basis. You also have to think about it from a monthly to yearly perspective. So if you can only afford to spend $20 a month on Facebook ads, just keep that in mind and make each of your ads extremely segmented so they can reach a specific demographic. And then finally, what's your retention plan? How are you capturing emails? Are people who are going on your site providing their email addresses? What is the conversion rate? How many people, what's the ratio of people who come to your site to people who are actually capturing, to people who are giving you their email addresses? All this information is relevant and will help you determine the success of your marketing campaign. All right, well, that's it for today, guys. I know it's a lot of information, but let me know if you have any questions.
Well, we
I'm
actually,
sorry, guys. I'm really sick.
oh, that's okay. That's okay. We actually have a few questions. Well, we actually have I think 14, but I'm going to go with the, I guess you could say, most interesting ones. Testing. Currently, I let people try out my prototype first, and then they purchase. How do I test my brand globally?
So there's different ways of doing that. First, before you test sort of your brand globally, you need to look at your Google Analytics and get a sense as to who is currently using your product. If you see that there's already a interest in a specific country, go with that specific country and essentially try to reach out, like I mentioned earlier, to influencers and send just a simple email to see what type of feedback they have. It's best to ask for feedback first to see to sort of get advice from these influencers and get an understanding of what they like and dislike before asking for favors. So that would be my recommendation. If you don't have a specific if you see no sort of traction from any countries, but you have sort of and you've done your keyword research and have an understanding of where there's potential opportunities for your business, then I would reach out to these influencers in these specific countries by just sending them a simple email and going through the process I just said.
Gotcha, gotcha. Are AdWords worth it, even though Facebook ads are somewhat more direct and there are Google restrictions in other countries?
Yes, Google Ads are extremely important. So earlier I talked about SEO. So SEO is getting more and more tricky. Ranking your website high from an SEO standpoint is getting increasingly difficult because, I mean, Google is making its algorithm more and more complex. So yes, buying Google Ads is extremely important and extremely effective, and it also helps you target different countries. So the way to do it there would be to target specific countries based on your research, based on who's coming to your site, and kind of expand from there.
Awesome. Um, do I have to tailor my message for each region? Do I have to do that? Or basically, do I have to make my messaging region appropriate?
Well, so it really depends on your business. If you're providing something that's service-based, yes, you might have to, strictly because you want to make sure that your customer understand what your service is all about. Something like fashion, the example I gave earlier, fashion is universal. I mean, people see a shirt or pants, they understand what it is. So it's a lot easier for you to be able to sort of keep your site strictly in English and only have an FAQ page that would be translated for that matter. So yes, eventually, when you're growing, you will want to have localized content, but when you are starting out, you can just have your site strictly in English and start promoting it to all the specific region and see the type of traction that you get from different customers.
Very awesome. Very awesome. Um, oh, this one just says, love the customer avatar hack.
Oh,
Oh, if we're not in the community, if we're not part of the community, what do we do? I'm guessing this particular individual probably did some research and sees an opportunity in a niche that they're not really a part of. So how do they actually go about branding themselves?
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, you'll have to find a way to be part of that community. So if you see an opportunity in, I mean, right now I'm seeing a lot of ads as far as like making money with t-shirts. Uh, a lot of people are sort of testing that with like Facebook ads and whatnot. So if you don't have an in within the specific community, you need to find the people who do, because people are going to read through you through your message and through your branding if you're not authentic and if you're trying to fake it, if you will. So it's extremely important. If you have an interest in that community, start to get embedded. I personally love Reddit. Reddit for e-commerce, for example, is great. There's a lot of different communities in there. There's a lot of sort of discussion boards, and it could be a great way to sort of get information about specific communities. Quora is also great for other demographic. Facebook groups can be good as well. I mean, as long as you're not spamming and you're just sort of going in and having sort of a one-to-one interaction with individuals to kind of like really get a sense of what gets them going and sort of ask them questions, then it's fine. If you're going into these groups and you're spamming, obviously, I don't, yeah, it's only going to have negative effects on your brand.
Downvotes.
Yeah.
All right. I think you know what? One more question, and we'll let you get some sleep. Uh, on average, how much marketing and branding should I do before I actually launch?
Well, I mean, it really is up to your business, right? So I personally recommend brands as to start marketing as early on as possible. Once you have an idea of what it is that you're going to put out in the market, maybe start a Kickstarter page. I know Kickstarter is really, I mean, probably people in the audience are like rolling their eyes. It's a little overrated, but it's a great way to test ideas. Big brands are using Kickstarter to test their concepts.